Hi everyone, my name's Heather Shepard, your host and guide along your journey with the Keto Cancer Solution podcast. This is episode 12, Spiritual Insights Along Your Journey with Cancer. Today I have a dear friend and mentor with me on the show, JoAnne Dodson. JoAnne has been learning and living the Kalakanasse lineage of Katasi for over 17 years. JoAnne is a ceremonial guide of these ancient healing ways from the Eastern Andes. She is also a teacher and an author. She just released a wonderful book called The Spirit of Chocolate, which you can learn more about and purchase on her website, JoAnne Dodson, JoAnneDodgson.com. Today, I feel very fortunate to have JoAnne on the show with us, as she is going to share some very potent, empowering insights from a ceremony and ancient divination practice known as a bone throw. I invited her on to do a bone throw to help assist individuals along their journey with cancer. A bone throwing ceremony is an ancient divination ceremony and healing art. In the Katasi lineage, bone throws are described as a calling of the spirits ceremony. This powerful healing ceremony offers guidance, doctoring, and teachings from the 60-plus spirits in JoAnne's bone bundle. I've participated in several bone throwing ceremonies with JoAnne and have found them to be incredibly insightful and empowering throughout my life. The teachings from the bone throws I've engaged in with JoAnne continue to bring healing, insights, and clarity along my path, life, health, and well-being for months and even years after the ceremony. It's that potent. Today, I have presented a question to the bones with regard to cancer to help assist you all along your healing journey. Many of us are very familiar with linear-related tools to approach cancer and healing with, such as diet, schedules, treatment modalities, medicines, and supplements. And while these things can be incredibly helpful and important, I've found that many people place all or most of their thoughts and attention on these linear-oriented approaches, while the nonlinear realms, the emotions, the feelings, our inner landscape, the feminine aspects of ourselves, those nourishing, slow, reflective places and energies, well, they tend to get the back seat. Today, I invited JoAnne on the show to bring in nonlinear insights to cancer offered by her bone bundle and the spirits. The question I invited JoAnne to ask the bones to help assist you all along your journey with cancer is, what is needed to help individuals with cancer bring balance and well-being and health back to the center of their lives? But before we dive into the episode today and see what the bones have to say about our question, I have to give a disclaimer that the Keto Cancer Solution podcast is not intended as medical advice in the Western medical sense or terms. All information shared on the Keto Cancer Solution podcast is based on my background and extensive education in nutrition, classical Chinese medicine, shamanism, and ancient healing arts. This podcast and everything that JoAnne and I share today is to be used for informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. So welcome, JoAnne. I'm really excited to have you here and to hear from the bones and what they have to say. And for those of you tuning in today, it may be really nice and helpful to have a visual of what the bone throw looks like. And for those of you who are wanting to do so, you can go to my blog about this episode at theketocancersolution.com, go to the blogs tab, and look for the blog called Spiritual Insights from a Bone Throw. So again, welcome, JoAnne, and I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to sharing what the bones have had to say. What we'll be discussing today is the spirits themselves are the ones who are responding to the question. So your listeners will hear the names of the different spirits who are teaching us through the throw. So there's like the elk and osprey and wind spirit and deer. And they all have different medicines they bring, different gifts they teach us about. So that's how our conversation is going to be guided. And a bone throwing is done by, so the question that you posed, as I was doing the throw, I asked that question and then blew with my breath the question onto the bones. And then the bones are dropped onto a cloth that has a symbol. So our discussion then is guided by what the spirits are saying and where they're lying on this symbol that has many layers of meaning.
So would you be willing to share a little bit about your experience of studying the bones and what that process was like for you?
Yeah, it's really one of the great passions of my life once I experienced the bones. And in the lineage of Katasi, this is a ceremonial way that's passed among the women, generation to generation to generation. So my teacher was Kay Whitaker, and she was the apprentice of Chia Hedeka, who's an elder from a tribal people in the Eastern Andes. And Chia was the apprentice of others. So when we engage in a bone throwing, we're really stepping into this tens of thousands of years of people engaging in this ceremony in healing ways. So there's an extraordinary field of knowledge that we're experiencing in this time on the planet and among us on the planet, yet it has this ancient heritage. And the process was many years of studying with spirit nations, what they had to teach me. And it's one by one by one by one. For months, weeks, months, or even years, one particular guide is teaching and offering their medicines. And then there's several steps of the process to determine if that spirit then becomes part of the bundle and then what the bone piece looks like. And there's many, many steps to that process. For several years, that it was very private and personal. Nobody saw the bones. I didn't really talk about it. Nobody saw the symbol on the cloth. So that allows the cultivation of very personal relationships with all of these guides. And we create our language, we create our understanding with each other. And then it was through being given permission at different stages to eventually bring the ceremony out. So very much like an old way where an elder says you're ready and takes the next step. So I appreciate that aspect of staying with the integrity of the heritage from which this lineage comes. Mm-hmm. And what I see the effects of, so all those years where it was private and personal, I gave a lot of throws to myself. And so the extraordinary healing and guidance and teaching is a benefit to my life that I just can't even calculate or measure. Yeah. And then the joy of bringing it to others and experiencing how the doctoring occurs is just it's an honor and a gift and a pure delight to be involved with. Mm.
That's really beautiful. So it's not a 2-week seminar you could learn to throw the bones.
No, it's taken some doing. And it's alive. A bone bundle is alive for the lifetime of a bone thrower. Mm. So it continues. So even the point of beginning to share with another, that doesn't end the studies. And every bone throw I do, I learn. There's an endless learning, endless deepening of connection with the spirits, how they talk about what they're talking about, and sometimes new bone pieces come in. So it's a living bundle.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's really important for people to understand the whole process and how rich it is and how much time and energy that's just donated to this whole process of engaging with the spirits, and it brings such richness to all the throws, as you all will see here soon. One thing that stood out to me about this throw in particular, and I'll post pictures on the blog of what the throw actually looks like so you all can see this, but one thing that stood out to me was how the bones seem to focus around the center. And why don't we dive right into the throw, JoAnne, and see where this leads us?
Okay, that sounds great.
Cool.
Well, I'll start at the beginning of the throw, and then we can go to that center area where you've noticed all of those bones are falling. So the story of the bones is guided by what are called pointer lines. So they guide our way through how spirits are beginning and talking us through their response to this question. So the question being, how do people with cancer hold and bring balance, well-being, health to be at the center of their lives? And the first piece is praying mantis, who is sitting outside of an ear on the left side. So this is what exists outside the person. This is what exists out in the world of words, ideas, thought forms, concepts. So around cancer, around healing, around whatever that might be. But what is occurring is those are creating boxed in, limiting perceptions. So the spirits are saying, be attentive to that. You don't have to judge them. There's nothing wrong about them. You need to be aware of what you're hearing, what's being taken in. That actually the effect is limiting. It's shutting down the picture of oneself, of health, of well-being, who you are. It's constraining to that. What the spirits are directing attention to is being shown by this flow of lines that starts at this root in the ground cloth. It's a root place, a rooting. And the energy held there is unconditional love in that particular place. And so rather than the primary focus being all this information out there and everybody else's ideas, and there's probably 1,000 recommendations that come someone's way. Or once you start doing your own research, you find information that's contradictory to other information. It's very confusing. Mm-hmm. Imbalancing takes us out of balance. The spirits are saying the first place to root in this exploration of health and well-being and balance with a diagnosis of cancer is to root in this energy of love that has no condition, love that has no exception. And this starts on the inside with oneself. Even with a diagnosis of cancer, to be in a loving relationship with one's own being. And then that whole line sweeps up and eventually ends up in the eye, on the side of the feminine. So far, all of this activity is primarily in the feminine, the realm of energy and vision and blueprints for our lives, the energy of ideas and emotion. So we sweep up from unconditional love in the roots to the eye. So then that's the lens. That's the lens through which to see oneself, to consider any possibilities for next steps to take, to consider how to live today, to consider how to even conceive of this diagnosis of cancer. There may be other language that would be helpful. Mm-hmm. So we have here cancer, and this whole constellation grows, and it's usually very fear-based. Yeah. And no control centered. And the spirits are saying those are some of the limiting concepts that are coming from outside. So they're calling people to their own inner knowing, to your grounding in oneself in a very loving way, like a tree whose roots are in the earth. That's your rooting place. Okay. And then to see, to perceive, to approach any information you receive from that lens. No judgment, no better, no less, but what is accurate and genuine according to your own knowing. Because the piece near the eye is Parrot, who's talking about see what you see with your own lens of your own knowing. So it's using discernment. It's taking a closer look. It's looking from another perspective. It's wondering about any information that one receives from anybody else. There's a deep inner calling here, a deep coming home to one's own self, one's own knowledge, and just recognizing, being able to recognize where this influx of information or these ideas that are outside, how some of them are resulting in a boxed in, limited picture.
Okay.
Of health, even of what health is or well-being is, what cancer is, how to approach it. One of the pieces, this is the sun, which represents the songs. This is every individual's genuine beingness. So this is from the rooted place in unconditional love, and this is birthing the knowing of you. So even in the course of addressing a physical condition, the spirits are saying part of holding balance, health, well-being is continually approaching this birthing of you into really knowing you. You're not defined only by the diagnosis of an illness. You're not defined by anybody else's prognosis for you or protocol for you. This is coming into your whole knowingness of you. And here's a sea turtle right next to there saying, this is a homecoming. And bee goddess, who's about incredible, vast potentials. So these three pieces are talking about a very empowered way of living, of feeling about oneself, of the wholeness of oneself, not to get lost in the picture of addressing a health condition, that the seeking of the wholeness of oneself is primary. It comes first before even any of the pieces that talk about approaching a health condition that's out of balance.
Well, that's a really different approach than what we're taught.
Yes, it would be necessarily, that would be kind of a side note, or the luxury to maybe do when you have some time. And after there's some improvement in the diagnosis even, or the condition, like that comes after. And it's a maybe. From the spirit's perspective, that's the first place. That's the foundation. Okay, great. And then the re-emphasis of this unconditional love is the vulture who represents unconditional love is right here in this whole area and aiming right into this whole conversation. So essentially, finding a way, in addition to whatever the medical interventions and physical health interventions may be, this holistic perspective to feeling aware of also one's emotional well-being and mental well-being and spiritual well-being is essential to the picture. And without that, the other remedies are kind of a hodgepodge or disconnected or stress-filled dynamic. We don't have this foundation that's being built or that we allow ourselves to aim our attention into. There's a piece right around the heart. So this would be the heart chakra area. And this is the center, which is also the center of one's being. So this is a bobcat piece that represents those who the question is for. So these are our conversation with your listeners who have a diagnosis of cancer and how to approach it. So this piece represents them right in the heart. And this is Bear, who's with them, right near the heart. So to understand, the spirits are saying, hold yourself in your own heart. Hold yourself very embraced in a loving, caring regard. What's being shown in another piece is that there's some judgments about one's own body. And that's part of what's throwing things out of balance. When we're ill or things aren't working well or we've been given the diagnosis or we don't feel well, we'll tend to fall into a place of judgment. There's some failure. There's something wrong about me. There's something less about me. And the spirits are really calling that into question. That will not serve health and well-being and healing. It's counterproductive. So to hold yourself in a loving place, and Bear is about the medicine of gratitude. And it's there tipped a little on the side, so saying to be appreciative of your own life existence. So a human being who's finding their way through this cancer experience, what can you still, even in that moment, love about your own existence? This is not falling into a judgmental place about one's own life. or one's own beingness. This is about staying centered in you, in a loving place about you and for your life. There's no failure here. There's no wrongdoing. There's no need to judge. So the first flow of information is around this deeply respectful, caring, nurturing approach to one's own self and one's own life in the big picture of self, and then approach this diagnosis of a particular condition. That's next. And it's not the only. We can get really narrowed in and forget about the rest of the whole of oneself.
That's great. It's interesting to see that the spirits point all that out and point out the judgment piece. I feel like can be really big with a diagnosis like cancer. People often think that they're doing something wrong, or that they've really messed up, or that they're not doing well with their life. So I think that's a really powerful piece that stands out with regard to that.
Yeah. There's another place of emphasis around, it's all in the new moon part of the ground. So this would be a new beginning, a new cycle in one's own life, but also in this time on our planet, in our understanding as people of how to approach health and well-being. And a piece that would, in the way it's fallen on the cloth here, it's representing acceptance, the very center of the spiral of this new time. And also bringing healing to grief, that there will be waves and cycles of grief. And there's no wrongdoing about grief. It makes sense to grieve a change or a loss or a reconstruction of life that's unexpected. Mm-hmm. But that's a place to pour a lot of attention. And then Osprey is right there asking about the legacy. What's the legacy you're leaving? It's an interesting question in the midst of healing to be considering a legacy. And the way the Osprey approached this is it's not the legacy we leave behind when we die. That's a kind of a Western concept, like we leave an inheritance or we leave behind some, something on the physical level. Sure. And there may be something important about that. But this is the legacy we're leaving every moment. We leave an energetic blueprint. And there's something for people in this conversation about cancer to how to approach balance, well-being, health, that with this place of honoring of oneself, acceptance of oneself, no sense of failure, no sense of judgment, allowing the movement through the waves of grief and then the ease from the grief. And then there might be a next aspect that comes up. Not drowning in the grief, but finding a way through. And there's something about that leaves a legacy, a way of approaching healing around cancer that has new elements to it for one's own personal approach, but also a pathway for others potentially to follow. So this is a question that Osprey asks just to have around. What's the legacy I'm leaving in this moment? Am I sitting in a place of sense of failure? Am I sitting in a place of sense of not good enough somehow? I've just left that imprint in the world for other people to decide they can feel that too. From the Katasi perspective and from the spiritual perspective, that's just an inaccuracy. There's nothing not enough about you. It's an inaccurate idea. So what about the legacy that might be left of feeling in a place of acceptance of where I am in this moment, acceptance of this is a circumstance in my life, and determining how I'm going to go about it. I'm going to approach it from a rooting in non-judgment, really new way of living, ancient way of living, but new to our contemporary society. And what a legacy for somebody finding their way through a healing process with that as a foundation.
Beautiful.
So do you want to look at that center place?
I'd love to.
Okay. There's a whole bunch of bones here, so I'll talk about who's here and we'll piece together the story.
Sounds great.
These two are a little bit to the side, and then there's a area here where they've almost made a whole circle, but there's many layers and interline pieces. They're kind of woven together here. But these two pieces want to be spoken about first is the wild boar with the river. And they're both in very active, alive expression. And the wild boar is saying, ask the question, what's most delicious about life for you? So in approaching healing, balance, well-being, wild boar medicine is really important from the spirit's perspective to keep asking oneself that question. What's most delicious about life for me? And there's great passion here. The river is about passion, and these two bone pieces are connected. This is awakening one's own passion for life, what you really love about life, about your life, about being alive, and to keep that very present from day to day to day. What is most delicious about life for you? So when we're not feeling well, it might be taking a nap and getting some rest. It might be having some really nourishing food. It might be talking with a dear friend. There's a lot in the throw about connectedness and community. So this is comfort, care, love, enjoyment, pleasure, those kinds of dynamics. Those do not have to be left behind when given a medical diagnosis. From the spirit's perspective, they're vital to healing. So for people with cancer to keep that alive, what are your passions? What do you love? What do you love about life? For some people, it might be dancing. For some people, it's they love being around vibrant colors, or they love plants. Whatever that is, get a lot of it. And fill your world and your life with it. Then in the very center of the throw, one of the pieces that's going right up and down through the center is the great owl, who's about following your inner knowing, following your inner authority. You are the one living your life. So this quest for healing and balance and well-being, at the very center of things, the spirits are saying, follow your own inner knowing, follow your callings. And this owl is flying right to the heart. So from the roots to the very heart and then to the above. This is also a deep connectedness with the earth and the cosmos, with the physical life and the non-physical aspects of life, and to follow your own inner knowing.
And was that gray owl? Sorry, you broke up when you just were naming the piece.
The great horned owl.
Okay, thank you.
Great horned owl. And it's also touching into the starfish, who is about wholeness. So how are you wanting to seek the remembering and the feeling of your own wholeness? You are not cancer. You are not the diagnosis. You are not the protocol. You are you, the whole of you. And to follow your inner knowing to what really feeds that remembering. That's key. That's at the very center. And dolphin is there, who's about freedom, completely free. This is the dolphin who's just swimming in the ocean. Home is the ocean. It's vast, vast, vast sense of home. In relationship with one's own species, the pods of the family of dolphins and all the others in the ocean. And the dolphin breathes air. So it's this dance. There's no confinement. The dance in the worlds of the physical and the non-physical. The realm of our everyday physical 3D life and the realm of the spirits and energy and ancestors, and that's the feminine. So this is a dance of the masculine and the feminine, a great balance. So what are you doing? The masculine energy of the doing and the action taking, also with the being, the holding, the feminine that carries the blueprint of the knowing of you. This is at the center. That's where your freedom is really found. And then from that place to make the choices about how to approach any specifics about your health, particulars of how you want to address whether it's medication or supplements or food or activities in your life. One big message from the earth here is to spend more time with the earth, to be, breathe the fresh air and get your feet in the dirt and sit beside a tree and watch the birds. Whatever that is for any individual, the earth is a great healing ally. She helps change things. She's in a place on the ground that's an aspect that is a marker of significant transformation. She assists the transformation of healing.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay.
And she's joined with the aspects that are about community. And she's part of community, a healing community. But the sandhill crane, who's about who are your people, who's your tribe, who's your family, who's your community, is sitting with the piece that represents healing and nourishment. And they're mirroring across the ground the earth, so the earth is part of this community. But the spirits are calling people to find healing communities, healing people who, when you're together, that there's a sense of nourishment, back and forth, exchanging of nourishment. There's healing for everyone there. And this is up for change. The description here is that people may be seeking relationships that have this. They may be ending relationships that are not supportive of their healing process. This is really, really key. It's with another piece and in a part of the ground that again represents significant change. This is a healing agent, a change-making aspect to seek out and create a relational world that is very nourishing and healing.
Wow. So would you say the bones are suggesting that this is something kind of in progress right now that will help to assist people along their healing journey to find more supportive, nourishing community where they can heal?
Yeah, it's in process and it's being looked for.
Okay.
It's being looked for, and it will have significant effect. So again, like we were talking about, kind of what becomes forefront, the next intervention or the next research, that's important. That's important to know about. But it's not like then wait until that's figured out and then get these other things in place. There's this deep foundation in one's own self in a loving, non-judgmental way, and a relational world that is supportive and nourishing for all involved.
Wow.
So this is healing communities. These are personal relationships and also other ways, like your podcast is obviously reaching people who are reaching for one another around their own healing processes. That kind of connection. And the sandhill crane talks about our relationships as like the way the sandhill crane migrate. They're together. They're purposefully together. They know where they're heading. And they're joined together in that aim. And even the structure of their flock changes. There's a V formation, so there's a structure, but everybody moves around in it, and they're really communicative. They have a very intricate language. They know why they're together, and they're heading somewhere together, and they're all in it with each other. That's the quality the spirits are saying for people to keep looking for, and you can find it, and you can create it purposefully with one another. It's in such a prominent place in what creates a turning. It creates a shift. It creates a dynamic that supports well-being, health, balance for oneself, and ultimately for the earth. The earth is a healer. The earth is a healing ally. And these are all elements of the earth. So the earth as a whole, but also as a tree or birds or the ocean, a river. But also any personal healing means healing to the collective. So there's this dance going on. But you don't have to wake up in the morning and go, okay, today I'm healing all the collective. The spirits are calling people to their very personal well-being. And the natural effect will be touching others. The natural effect. So to not equate illness with failure, undo from that belief that opens the doorway for others to approach a healing of a medical condition without a sense of failure. Now we're opening a new doorway to healing that isn't layered with judgment, denigration of the self, and loss of passion of one's own life. Those things, the love of oneself, the passion for one's own life, the deep connectedness with others and the earth, these come before we get to any specifics. How the bones talk about health or illness showing up. These are strong foundations then to go to the specific. The choosing of the next step, the choosing of a healing process or protocol. That's next out of the foundation.
Wow. So it seems like this whole foundational piece is in some way about creating a new momentum that will impact the physical.
Yes. That's a beautiful way to describe it. So it's like having nourishing soil so the plant can grow. Enough rain and sun and warmth so it's time to grow. That inner foundation has that same effect. And then that momentum is built. Yeah.
Great. Beautiful.
Yeah. There's another place interesting place, but it's kind of along this theme we're talking of what do you want to grow? This is butterfly. And she's sitting in the very center of a spiral that represents the gifts of the West in Katasi, which is also death. So this is death on all sorts of levels. Can be just talking about physical death. We can be also talking about any kind of change can be understood as a death. Something ends and something begins. Something is let go of and something else comes about. So butterfly is right there in the very center of that dynamic. This is butterfly who's coming out of a chrysalis. So this is moving from inside a self-created space where incredible transformation takes place and then emerging into new flight, a new form of existence, a new cycle. So there's something for this question about people with cancer that as they approach healing, balance, well-being, they can perceive this as that kind of emergence, that kind of change. They're in some kind of transformation. Underneath the butterfly is magpie, who can talk about lightness, fun, curiosity, adventure. Here, magpie is heavy, serious, dreading. So right now, the spirits are saying, when that's flavoring, that kind of uncertainty, fear, heavy, like the weight, a burden, is flavoring a transformation, then where this butterfly is being shown as looking for something better. Like there's something better. And if we're looking for the better, what it means is we've situated ourselves in the less. Something to watch about that positioning of something is wrong with me. A medical diagnosis often gets translated because something's not functioning as, like a cancer cell is not functioning as a healthy cell would. I mean, on a basic level, we could look at it like that. But to take that to the bigger level of the whole self is something, there's some failure about me, something wrong about me. So then it sets this momentum off on a course, not to what would genuinely support one's health, but we can get led astray because what's feeding that momentum of search is burden, weight, dread, fear. So that's going to be the map we start to follow. That's the energy that it's like the wind beneath the wings of that butterfly. That's how it's going to fly. So the spirits are saying to shift that is to be aware of what is guiding any search. Like, is it fear-driven? Is it a fear of death? This is sitting right in the center of death. And that is a fear that we're really entrained to live with, fearing it. If the guiding energy that fuels our next step is fear, that's going to flavor everything we do. If we can have this other foundation the spirits are talking about, if we can seek to keep remembering who we are and being at home in ourselves and our lives, and remembering what we love about life and what is delicious about life. And inside of that, we have this condition we're looking for how to address and then take the next step. We're going to go along a different path. And that's then where the pieces around health, around this butterfly, the aspen tree, who can talk about health or when there's things out of balance. And then another piece, they're all around the butterfly. So this energy around being really clear about what's guiding you to take a step. What's guiding that step.
And would the Spirit say right now that what's influencing that right now is fear around death?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a big influence. And it influences a lot of people even without a diagnosis from cancer.
Yeah.
It's something we're really enculturated. And then what's interesting is that there's a bone piece that represents death, and that piece is sitting right in the base chakra, so a foundation, and it's sitting with a horse bone that represents receiving. So what the spirits are saying, a primary shift we can make in our lives to live not ruled by that fear of death is to learn about receiving the gifts of death. In Katasi, we would call it befriending death, walking with death. Death is part of life. We don't even really have great English language to talk about it very well, because even to say that is separating out death and life.
Mm-hmm.
So in the base chakra, this is another new foundation that the spirits are directing people's attention toward in their healing, is how can they learn to walk with death? And a diagnosis of cancer may be a pathway to help them to really find out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
For many, a cancer diagnosis raises that question immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. Is this about physical death?
Yeah.
And that's an understandable, and it's a sacred stage to come to face and explore and question our own death. We are all going to die. And on this planet, all beings have certain life cycles. It's part of life on this planet. And it's part of our human existence. So as the spirits are describing here, it's a very essential question for any of us to wrangle with, to delve into. It's a courageous quest to explore the gifts of death. That's a really different perspective than how am I going to outrun it?
Yeah.
What am I going to avoid it? And somewhere in there, then there's a belief that something's wrong with death.
Mm-hmm.
Something's a failure about death. Something's horrible about death.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another place the spirits are calling attention to shift from a fear-based approach to death or to life. We live with a lot of fear about life. And we live with a lot of fear about dying. And we're in it all. We're living and we're all living and we're all dying, and it's part of our existence. Mm-hmm. So this is a very sacred part of the process of healing, finding balance, well-being, is this journey to get really close with death. I mean, these two bone pieces are sitting, touching, fully receiving death, coming to know death. What is it? What happens? What's the energy of death? Not just physical, not just ending our physical lifetime. Mm-hmm. What is this dynamic called death? And then when that's fully understood, or even just playing around with it, you don't have to get there. It's not really fully understanding. There will always likely be mystery around it. But then this flight of the butterfly, who is undergoing a death, she's leaving behind what has been and going somewhere new. Now that movement towards change has a completely different flavor. That butterfly has never flown. So we know butterflies fly. We kind of know the story. They come out of the chrysalis and then they fly. But the being who's living that has never done that before.
Uh-huh.
We need to remember that. That's like each of us taking that step into the unknown. That first flight and away from that chrysalis, that is completely into the unknown, into new territory. That little being used to have a lot of legs and walked around. Now it's about to fly.
Uh-huh.
So we can take that kind of sense of magic, mystery, possibility, potential into those next steps that we don't really know what's ahead or what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very different existence than the fear-based, dreading, afraid kind of movement.
Yeah.
So that's that passion the spirits are calling to come forward. That's that lovingness. That's that acceptance. That's that being engaged in the living, being alive. And from there, the choice is about how to approach on the physical level what someone's wanting to approach, needing to approach, choosing to approach. So there's something here about detoxing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a piece that can talk about when there's something toxic or out of balance. And this is poison ivy. And it's pointing out a toxin or toxins. And they're in the part of the ground that would represent in our human body our colon, the digestive system.
Okay.
So on a level of care, we've been talking a lot about emotional well-being, the inner world foundation. And then one very specific thing about the physical level is detoxing processes that help clear out what is undigestible for the body. So sometimes that's the medication. So if there's been some medical protocol that also has side effects, it's important to approach a detox process to support well-being. It supports the effect of whatever that medical intervention might have been without having lingering side effects that then compromise. This is also being very attentive to what your body can and cannot metabolize or assimilate or digest. So that this is speaking to a very healthy diet, what's going in and on your body that is truly nourishing. And if shifts are being made around diet, which is also at another level of understanding where that piece around nourishment is, it's also about food, and that sitting next to the piece that's about healing, it's basically talking about food as a healer, food as sacred medicine, considering food as part of your community. Who's your healing community? So you might have people healers, but the spirits are saying, consider food as part of this healer, your healers.
I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then so often when we start making changes in our diet, as our body is learning to assimilate more fully, truly, genuinely nourishing food, what's truly food, we need to detox what our body has been holding on to, that it just couldn't metabolize. So detox processes really supporting the colon, supporting digestion, being very clear about the choices about what your body can assimilate, what is balancing, nourishing. You can digest, you can get the nutrients out of what you take in. Lots of things go on the body that the body cannot manage other than trying to deal with it as a toxin. It's toxic. So in this approach to healing with a cancer diagnosis, the primary thing on the physical level the spirits talk about is that piece. One last thing I just want to say, and I don't know if you have any other questions, but there's something really interesting here about ancient ways. So this is the dragonfly. It's right here near the womb, and it's near a horse piece, the wolf, who's about a teacher, teachings. And dragonfly is about ancient modalities. So Katasi is an ancient lineage. We have other ancient lineages from various cultures around our planet. We have ancient knowledges around food. We have ancient knowledges around, materials to use to build our homes. There's lots of information about ways of living that are different than our modern contemporary society. That is around the womb chakra. So that is being talked about as something for people to really take some time exploring. Take some time to reach beyond contemporary, modern day, situated information. There's something really valuable to find by aiming attention there. The horse piece that's by the dragonfly is about giving. It's like pouring attention into that, finding out possibilities that can really support the nourishment, the birthing of balance, health, and well-being. You may not, find people around you or in the predominant ways of the world that are agreeing with that or support you in that, but it doesn't mean it doesn't serve you. You have to start calling attention to human knowledges that can serve health and well-being, that take us back to our natural ways in connection with the earth, in connection with our bodies, in connection with one another, that is outside of hierarchy, that is outside of generation of fear, and that is deeply connected with the spirits. The deer is just right across. They kind of made a little circle here. The spirits are calling to the people who are listening with your podcast to deeply connect in with the realm of the spirits, especially in this exploration around befriending death. Like, who can help teach them about that? I often guide people to find a being in the non-human world who can help show them around how do they move with cycles of death. Our earth moves through seasons time and time and time again. There's an ending of one and a beginning of another. Plants go through cycles, an ending of a cycle, that's a death, beginning of another. And is there someone who can help be with them in their own process of healing, around exploring death, around exploring transformation? Healing is a transformation. Who can help them? And to look for that, purposefully look for that.
JoAnne, would you be willing to there's a lot of thought forms out there that you're bringing up this importance around connecting with the spirits and the non-linear. And there are some thought forms and beliefs out there that the spirits can sometimes be evil or, not supportive. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit for if people hear this and maybe something comes up around that when they hear the word spirits, about what the spirits really mean, and maybe if you'd just be willing to say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, when I'm saying the spirits, sometimes I'm speaking about a particular being. Like, my dad died, and I recognize when his spirit comes around now. So there's a particular being, the spirit of my dad. Or, as here in the bone throw, the deer and the elk and the butterfly, they're spirits who also have earth forms we're familiar with, but the spirit of that being is here. We also can talk about, like, the non-linear, the outside of 3D time-space. Some people call it the unseen realm, though some people see visuals, so we really don't have great language, but we'll just use all of that to see if we can find our way to some descriptions. The realm of energy is spirit. Like, every being, you have, like, your song is filled with you in the physical and your spirit. Every human being also has an energetic aspect of their being. Every tree, we can look at the tree out our window and we can see that tree. There's a spirit of the tree, the energy that emanates beyond its physical body. There's energetic sensation, the energetic experience of the tree. Most people are having experiences with this realm most of the time, but we just don't know what to call it, or we don't know how to separate it, distinguish it. Many people can name a place they love to go on the land, sit by the certain stream, or it's the tree in their backyard. or it's a certain landmass, like they just keep going back to this part of that continent, they're just drawn there. There's usually a spirit aspect, an energetic aspect to that calling. There's something they feel there. And most of us at that point, we stop being able to really describe it. It's hard to put into words. But anyone listening, I would encourage them to find that knowing. There's likely somewhere, someone, whether it's human or otherwise, that it's the energy of that being or place that is what they're tapping into and that they're so drawn to. Mm-hmm. Something they love. It's comfortable. It's comforting. It's safe. That kind of dynamic. The idea of evil is a thought form. It's an idea. It's a human made up idea. So it's important to examine if we've been around that idea, if we've believed in that idea. It's just important to take a look at what led us to it. What experiences have we had that we've called it that? And like where we began in the throat, the praying mantis, the very first bone, hangs upside down in the lavender bush and sees everything from a different point of view. So even that idea, the spirits would say, take a look at it from another perspective. Why did we immediately label it that? How did it get that label? Who said it should? So enjoy the experience. And this calling of people into the wholeness of their own being, it's also coming to know your own spirit, the spirit of you, the whole of you. Yes, the physical existence. And who are you energetically? Those fields are woven together in us. So if this concept of spirits, like that just feels way too big or, way too wide or not sure you want to tread there, you don't have to go into the whole of it. Choose one. Like a lot of people have inside their homes a stone they collected or shells they collected or plants they water every day or a cat or a dog or horses. There's another level of connection with the spirit of that being. Start there. Feel the spirit of that being. Know there's the physical existence. That's real. And there's the energetic existence. That's real. Just get to know. What is it about that stone? Why did you bring that stone into your house? Why do you just love the animal who shares your home? Why? It's the physical, yes, but there's going to be more to that story if we explore it. So that's a helpful beginning place. And then there's practices, like in Keto, there's very specific practices that help us hone that skill. That's one of the things I love about the lineage, because it's in a foundation of a people's way of living for tens of thousands of years using these particular skills. So then it becomes very clear about how to go about it. And it's less like wobbling around in this world that truly is boundless. So that's where this seeking out of ancient knowledge is. If there's some lineages people are interested in finding out how to then keep honing that skill. They're available. And Keto is one, but there's many other ways. Most cultures I know of or heard about, before any kind of oppression of their people, had a connectedness with spirit realm. Like the westernized oppression of many, many indigenous peoples tried to erase that. We tended to erase it. If we've grown up in a westernized society, it's not really talked about. We don't go to kindergarten and learn spirit communication. We better know how to do math, though, and read those letters. That's needed, part of our world, perhaps needed. But we've missed this whole other realm of who we are. That clearly is a huge aspect of how the spirits in the throw are calling people to their own healing, to reconnect fully with yourself and life and others.
Really beautiful, really potent. I love the piece around the community and creating a healing community and how we're moving towards that. That's really, really potent. And I think so often we've just learned to give our power away to people who we consider to be authority figures. And the throw seems to really speak to that and being your own inner authority and how empowering that is to one's healing process.
Yes. Yeah, that's at the very center of the whole throat. If we identify one bone that's sitting most central, it's the great horned owl, who's about your own inner authority. So you are the chooser of your path with your healing. This is your body, this is your mind, this is your spirit and heart and your life. And yes, others' information may be helpful. Some of it may be really distracting and not helpful. And that great horned owl, is a bird who flies at night. It's incredible sensory information. And choosing to live that way, even though like the bluebird would go, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to fly at night. You're a bird." So, you're going to hear that kind of thing, like, "Why aren't you doing this protocol? Why are you doing that one?" That kind of information can be very challenging to manage. And then that's important to know that you can discern. And the great horned owl is really at the very center here and saying, let your inner knowing be your guide. And this, from the great horned owl's perspective, is a journey to wholeness, not a deficit, not a wrong. You're in a passage, a journey. You can approach all of your healing choices around, is this serving the whole of my being? Is this serving me living in my wholeness, here and now, not the past, not tomorrow, but today? Mm-hmm. Is this serving me today? And then tomorrow comes, and now we choose tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like befriending death or creating a different relationship with death is really paramount to that whole shift as well.
Yes, it's really key. And one of the, I think it's kind of feels like an irony or a paradox to a lot of people, but as we befriend death, we actually feel more alive.
Yeah.
Because we really know this is our moment. Whatever our circumstance, wherever we are, whatever our life is about, this is the moment we have. Mm-hmm. So how do we want to be? How do we want to live? What do we want to be thinking? What do we want to be sharing? How do we want to be engaging, relating? And so it actually heightens life rather than diminishes life. But we're taught to try to outrun it and avoid it at all costs. So I love the way you described it. It's shifting our relationship with death and also understanding death not only on the physical level. Mm. Every change, healing is a death because something will be changed. I mean, every bite of food we eat involves transformation. We're really engaging in death all the time. Our body is shedding things all the time. So part of also when we have a condition that we're wanting to clear cancer cells or we're wanting to re-navigate how those cells are functioning, we're wanting a shedding of some kind.
Yes.
Detox is a shedding of some kind, a letting go of what doesn't serve you. So that's the gift of coming close with death. We engage with that energy, we utilize it, we respect it, choose it.
Really nice, really beautiful. Thanks for sharing all that.
It's been really, really a joy. Yeah, it's always engaging and intriguing how the spirits share and what they point our attention to. So it's been very fruitful for me to engage in the throw.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you doing this for all the listeners out there. And every time I listen to a bone throw, there's so much new information, and it just feels healing on not only for people who have this disease or who have had it, but for just the general population, for everyone. This seems like it's just really incredibly healing and nourishing. And for me, what I feel a shift in my body, that hearing this, the bones and what they have to say, has a completely different energy than, say, the power over energy or the hierarchy energy that can come around healing, or when you're in a medical building. Not all, but sometimes, as often is the case with cancer today and the facilities out there. So hearing this information, hearing what the spirits have to say, is so potent and enriching, and I can just sense and feel my body shift into these more nonlinear realms just by engaging in the conversation. So I feel like it's been incredibly healing, and really appreciate you coming on to share this knowledge and insight with everyone.
Thank you, Heather. It's been really a privilege.
Yeah. So if any of the...
Yes, it's always possible to do bone throws long distance. The doctoring, the healing isn't bound by time and space. They don't have to physically be in the space to feel the field like you're describing. There's an energetic shift that can take place. And also, some people receive bone throws by phone. That's just how they prefer to do it. But we also can set up internet connection so they can see the throw and all the pieces. And then photos are also provided.
Beautiful. Well, I would highly recommend a bone throw to gain deeper insights into one's healing process and healing journey. I know it's been incredibly healing and empowering for me in my life on many levels. So where could they contact you or reach out to you for individuals who are interested in a private bone throw with you, JoAnne?
If they go to my website, there'll be my contact information there, so they can call or email and we can talk about the specifics and when we could meet.
Beautiful. So thanks to all of you who joined JoAnne and I today for an episode all about the bone throw and cancer, and I hope you really enjoyed it and found it to be empowering and enriching to your life and to your journey with healing and with cancer. Again, for those of you who are interested in exploring work with JoAnne and possibly getting a bone throw, you can visit her at JoAnneDodgson.com. That's JoAnneDodgson.com. And for those of you who are interested in exploring more detoxification, physical detoxification of your body, of your colon, as the bones suggested here in the throw today, I invite you to reach out to engage in a one-on-one detoxification program together. It's one of the biggest parts of my practice and how I guide and assist people with cancer by implementing very effective, gentle, easeful, yet potent detoxification strategies into their lives to help get the toxins and the poisons out so that the body can heal itself, so that the body can breathe naturally, so that the body can be healthy again. And you all can learn more about my detoxification and other services at theketocancersolution.com. Thanks again for joining me for this really potent episode today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.